This episode of the Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, listen to up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, or give us something to discuss in our new post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. What's up, everybody? This is AJ coming at you at the top of the show. Just thought I'd let you all know that this is one of our annual most disappointing films of the year podcasts, which last year we split into 4 parts. We did 2 in the middle of the year and 2 at the end of the year to prevent another 2.5-hour podcast from happening, or however long they ended up being. There haven't been that many films this year, which is for various reasons we discuss in the episode. If for some reason you don't know why that is, just thought I'd let you all know that there are indeed time codes in the show notes below for when we talk about them, what we talk about, and when we talk about it, because we do spoil pretty much all the films we talk about, and if you want to skip through that makes sense. So there you go, and please enjoy the episode. Five. Should I start from 5, or is that too confusing?
It threw me off.
I don't know if I have enough time
he
to
started
wait.
from 5, and I clapped on 2 because I was just I wasn't listening. I was just used to hearing the clap, and I was like, cool. I've heard 3 noises. It's time to clap.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Hello. All right. Welcome to the most disappointing films of the first half of 2020. This is a sequel to our dumbest looking films of 2020 podcast we did at the start of the year. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hasn't been many films coming out this year. How are you going to do a whole podcast on it? And you know what? We thought about that. We thought, you know what? By the end of the year, there's only going to be 1 podcast's worth of films to talk about. But then we decided, if anything, this has been the most disappointing year for movies because there haven't been any. Because, of course, of the worldwide, if you're listening to this in the distant future and you haven't been reading your history books, it's because of the coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19, which has been ravaging the world.
Ravaging.
These are COVID times.
Yeah.
Except not in New Zealand, really. It's been ravaging the world, and us little hobbits down in New Zealand have actually been doing A-okay.
Yeah. So you can release your movies here.
Yeah, just go for it. We've got a huge market.
Yeah.
A huge market.
Yeah, so
come on, Hollywood.
Because this is like a sequel to that podcast, what we normally do is we'll like go through each of the films, even if we haven't saw them. I'll just mention like, this, and we didn't
saw them.
Even if we haven't saw them.
Look at the little boy who can't talk right. Everybody point and jeer.
Even if we haven't
seen
seen them.
Even if we never saw them.
Even if we haven't saw them.
I'm pretty sure I said even if we never saw them.
Oh. Okay, well.
Re-roll the tape.
Oh, yeah, listen back on the
listeners
tape.
will know.
Go through each of the films, even if we haven't saw them.
By the way, just for those who have tuned in for the first time, welcome to the Popture podcast. I am AJ, and over
I'm
there
Richard.
is Jeremy. And
Hey,
Richard.
I'm Jeremy.
Richard, who haven't saw something or other. I feel mean.
Yeah, I want to stop recording and replay it. Nah,
it's real annoying
wrong.
because you would give me this kind of shit, but I feel bad giving you this kind of shit.
If it helps AJ, I don't feel bad.
Well, I
think
don't understand. Like, I don't think that happened.
Well, if both AJ and I heard it, and we were the ones listening to
Yeah, but you guys are also stupid.
Oh, I'm turning off the podcast.
Well, I was just like, AJ, are you feeling less bad about this now?
Yeah.
Are you feeling more stupid? Because you are.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah.
Welcome to the Abuse Podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, you already know that is what this is.
Is this going to be a mean episode? Is this the tone we're setting?
Is it because we're so disappointed? I think we need to bring some positive energy to this disappointing podcast.
Should we just start again? Much like the year 2020,
yeah.
where you just wish we could fucking start over.
Now, usually these retrospective or looking forward podcasts that we do at the beginning, middle, and end of each year, they end up being extraordinarily long. Like, I'm talking...
Yeah, because Jeremy fucking yaps on.
Well, I mean, it is. I am the common denominator for all the podcasts that go to 4 hours long.
Yeah.
But combined, so all 4 parts of Most Disappointing and the 2 parts of Dumbest Looking that we've been doing for the last couple of years, they total about 6 hours or so of content.
Yeah.
But
It is worth checking at this point.
Yeah.
Jeremy, do you have anywhere to be? Because you always go, we'll be halfway through and he's like, by the way, I have to go in 3 minutes.
When we did this as a live podcast and he had to leave the live stream, that was the single most unprofessional moment of Popture's career.
It's because you said that it was going to go for an hour and a half tops. And then at 2 3/4 hours, I was like, I have to go.
But now you know better, so you haven't made any plans?
Well, no, I mean, my next plan is to be the person who wakes up with my daughter.
Yeah, your infant daughter doesn't need your help.
6:30 in the morning would be the time that unless, I mean, on this podcast, out of all of them, I would say it's most likely we are going to go to like 5:30 in the morning just because we have so little to talk about. We're going to inflate it.
Yeah, I have no idea what to expect. It's like, I mean, listeners can look at the time code.
Yeah, I think I would generally expect this is going to be looser than normal. Which is why we've just been hurling abuse at each other instead of starting the podcast. But
because we have 3 movies to talk about.
But also, the other thing is, not only have no movies come out, but the ones that did feel like they came out fucking ages ago. Remember Dolittle?
I try not to.
I don't have to because you guys saw it and I learned from you.
Oh, well, that's good for everyone. You'll shut up for a moment.
Oh, fuck, man. Oh, shit.
It's getting real dark.
Shit.
It's getting real dark, mummy.
No, we love having you here, Jeremy. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Dolittle. Okay, so... do you guys, the Grudge came out this year? There was a new one of those.
We did talk about it.
And then Like a Boss, I've written that down. I don't remember what that was.
Like a Boss is I think it has the breaker Tiffany Haddish in it.
Yeah.
I almost saw it and then I chose to watch Fantasy Island instead.
I didn't see either of these. I heard The Grudge was abysmally bad.
But you know what? It can't have been worse than?
What?
Dolittle.
Man, there have been, last year, there were maybe 2 or 3, wow, I can't believe these were that bad movies.
Yeah.
I feel like every second major release is a, wow, I can't believe how bad this movie is movie.
Yeah. Do you want to give a quick rundown before we go with the Eddie Murphy one? I remember watching that years ago. Do you want to explain what we mean by Dolittle?
Oh, so it's the Robert Downey Jr. Dr. Dolittle movie, which was a passion project of his, reportedly riddled with production issues from a shitty director and all sorts of other things going wrong with it. Do we want to say what it's about? We don't usually do that on these podcasts. We just talk about what we think of it. And what I thought of Dolittle was, this is the worst movie I have seen in years.
Oh my god! Yeah.
If you go back and you look at what's the worst movie of 2019, what's the worst movie of 2018? I went back and I think I didn't get till 2015 before I found a movie, I can't remember what it was, that I was like, yeah, that's probably worse than Dolittle.
Well, this is this decade's Sex and the City 2. It's the movie that this was one of the first movies to come out this decade, and it'll go down as one of the worst.
Oh, it was horrible. Everything was wrong about it. So Jeremy, you haven't seen it, right? Is that what you're saying before?
I've consumed a lot of content about how bad it is, though.
Oh,
so I feel like I have seen it just because so many things have been described to me.
Yeah.
You tell people what happens in this movie, they flat out don't believe you.
Yeah.
So essentially, to paint the picture, if you missed any of the marketing, it's like a Victorian era Dr. Dolittle story. Dr. Dolittle is a fictional character. He's originally a book, I think, is the original text.
Yeah.
Was a book, and he can talk to animals, and he's a doctor. And there's been several different movie versions, including the more famous Eddie Murphy one, which was set in modern day. This is set back in Victorian era, and it's about them looking for a dragon. And most of the movie is pretty fucking boring and not very funny. It's dodgy
Isn't there like a
special
whole
effects.
plot about the Queen and you have to like save the Queen of England?
Yeah, something like that. And there's like some like varying levels of quality of CGI of all the animals, who are of course voiced by A-listers and whatnot. But yes, in the end they do find the dragon. There's a dragon in this movie, and Dolittle is able to communicate with that dragon, who says, "Roar, I need an enema. I'm really constipated, roar." And so
Is that like
Robert Downey
actual
Jr.
text, like actual delivered lines in the movie?
No. And then so Robert Downey Jr. sticks his fist inside of the female dragon's asshole,
fists
and
an
then
animal.
pulls out all of the blockage out of her butthole, and including bagpipes. And then in a very funny scene, she does a massive fart in his face.
And this is Robert Downey Jr.'s passion project.
And not only was this his passion project, but Robert Downey Jr. actually came up with that ending. And
you might go, well, whatever, it's a silly kids movie. No, it's not a silly kids movie. It's a very serious kids movie for the most part. Like it's not really that comedic. There are wacky characters, but
there's a dragon butthole scene.
Guys, we have to remember Robert Downey Jr. did do a lot of drugs.
Yeah, this has been a passion project since like 2003.
Like he's done a lot of drugs, and that many drugs, that much drugs, that many, who knows, that much drugs over the course of your lifetime does actually permanently addle your brain. So that kind of like fun, kind of off-kilter character he manages to play on screen all the time, that's actually who he is. And so when directors and other people give him lines to say, that's fine because there's a structure around him. If he's in charge of coming up with the structure, this is probably what you're going to get.
And also, it is worth noting as well that the lines he was given to say were clearly given to him long after the fact, because maybe 70% of the dialogue in this film is like off screen. So people's mouths will be covered. There's the bit in the trailer you see when he's like wearing an old school diver suit and it's covering above his mouth. Or it'll be like the reverse shot thing, but it'll be like, it's my reaction shot while you're talking, and then it flips and it gets you listening to me talking. And it's like one of those things that the average moviegoer might not notice, but I knew that going into it that this was an issue in it. And it's so weird. And it's ADR. It's all recorded after the fact. And Robert Downey Jr. insists on doing this strange Welsh accent that he like can't really do. And so when he's like half of his face is obscured and he's going like, "It's all right to be scared." You have courage. You have courage, little squirrel boy. Yeah, it's fucking bizarre. It's one of the strangest movies I've ever seen. Having said all this, Michael Sheen plays the villain, and he's great.
You've come around to the Sheen train, huh? She's got you. Jess has convinced you that he can even make Dr. Dolittle great.
No. He didn't make Dr. Dolittle great. He is great. He's a very typical mustache twirling villain, and he's like,
you messaged me.
He's clearly he knows what he's doing.
You messaged me after I saw it and said, "What'd you think of Michael Sheen?" I was like, "I don't know." And you're like, "He's great, eh?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." But so that dragon scene, I really do need to emphasize. Like, I was saying, like, when I first saw it, I was like, it's weird that the Robert Downey Jr. one has the pulling the bagpipes out of a dragon's butthole scene, and that's not in the Eddie Murphy ones. But it's even pretty crass for an Eddie Murphy Dr. Dolittle. I don't think it would be, and it's so, and it farts, and then John Cena, who plays a polar bear, goes, "Teamwork makes the dream work," and I'm like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die watching this movie. And it's so bizarre. I can't believe it exists. It's the worst movie I've seen in years because it's just boring and bad, and then it ends and just the most absurd place that's like not It's weird feeling disappointed that a boring movie goes somewhere interesting at the end. That's what's wrong with it. It's off-brand, right? It's not in line with the tone of the rest of the movie, which maybe would be a good thing if it was a cool scene, but it's not a cool scene. It's a deeply stupid scene.
How do you think that the studio execs felt when they saw, first of all, what obviously they hated, because then they had to go and do all these ADR
Because
kind
studio
of scenes.
execs famously hate dragon enemas.
no, but obviously it was a tortured process and it went through so many different things. But then the final result was what ended up going out on screen. And
this is the best version.
there was a bunch of people who were just whew, all right, well, we prevented that other thing from going out. Thank God it wasn't that. And it ended up being this. And you're just how could anyone have felt okay with sending that out to be watched?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Bad Boys for Life. I don't think any of us saw that, did we? But
No.
currently a highest grossing film of the year.
No, yeah.
It also had a pretty high Rotten Tomatoes score from memory, which is surprising.
I have some friends who enjoy those movies and they enjoyed it more than than they thought they were going
First
to.
recommendation of the podcast, Bad Boys for Life. Check it out.
Hot.
All right, so now we'll skip over a couple, but that none of us saw, not worth talking about. But there's a big chunk that came out in February that they had a theatrical release, because it was about March that things started to get delayed, I remember. But these are all ones that they came out, they had a theatrical release, and then a month later they were on video on demand, because there's no point waiting 6 months because people might see that again. But the first big one of those was Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. We all saw. Jeremy, did you see this? Birds of Prey?
Yes. Yeah.
So, Birds of Prey, what did we think? Let's start with Jeremy, because he didn't get to talk about Dolittle.
I had...
Yeah, it sums it up perfectly.
Yeah. I did not like how much this movie aggressively tried to get me to like this movie. I have not seen any. I didn't see Suicide Squad. I hadn't seen Justice League, so I haven't seen really any of the last sort of several DC movies. And it's just so aggressively thinks it's okay. So it's that classic thing where someone thinks that they're super quirky and interesting and but then they're just actually quite normal, but they're just wearing funny clothes and they don't actually have that interesting of a personality. And that for me was this movie. Yeah. It's I'm super special and super a unique take, and it's instead I'm actually not. I'm just the same thing as always.
Now, AJ, you had quite a different perspective, I believe. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure thing. I am frantically trying to remember my feelings for this movie.
So that you can... that you can defend it.
Yeah. Well, so I really liked it. I actually really, really liked it. But I will concede that the fact I don't remember exactly what I liked about it is maybe a strike against it. I will concede that. But I can, off the top of my head, I really liked Ewan McGregor's Black Mask. I thought the coolest thing about the movie was that so Black Mask in the comics is a traditional, he's a Batman villain, I believe, and he's a mobster that wears a black skull as a mask, as he is in the movie. The greatest addition in the Birds of Prey movie is that it's thoroughly explained to you that he's essentially culturally appropriating the Black Mask. He has he's a collector, and he's collected all these tribal things from Africa, one of them being an African death mask, which he thinks is cool and cute because he's quite a
this is one of the last
character.
things to come out when blackface was still considered okay.
Still considered okay.
Now that it's officially bad.
Boy's the villain, and I thought that was
so it's fine.
So if you want something to happen in a movie that's totally not appropriate, just assign the villain to do it, and you can still portray it.
All right, I think that this is maybe too happening right now to be joking about this. For the rec, if you haven't seen it, it's not literally blackface. It's a war mask. It's not. Yeah. Anyway,
It's an African war mask that he has no business with. Anyway.
yeah, but that's what makes him like a villain to the core, and I really liked that. And he's also it's quite a fun performance from Ewan McGregor.
What I loved about Ewan McGregor in this is that he so obviously did not give a shit about this movie at all, and he just was like, I'm not going to act too hard. I'm just going to have a bit of fun on set, and that's all good. I'll get paid. No
and I
worries.
get to hang out with my girlfriend because he's like famously spoken out very negatively about superhero movies before. But he's sleeping with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, so he was like, yeah, sure. But yeah, so when this movie came out, AJ, I think you saw it like opening day, and I saw it a couple of days later, and you and I are quite, admittedly, both quite like very sensitive when it comes to like spoilers and stuff. When we consider each other's, with certain movies, we consider each other's opinion a spoiler. And so you said to our group chat, "Birds of Prey," and then you did like the praise emoji. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then I went to go see it, and I was like, that did not deserve a praise emoji. I'm more on Jeremy's side. I thought the movie was just kind of obnoxious. It's like it's the Deadpool 2.0. It's someone saw Deadpool, thought I could do that. But the main issue for me, I think, is and this is an issue that has become massively apparent because the film, while it was still in theaters, was rebranded to Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey. And it's like the movie should have just been called Harley Quinn, and then it should have been Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, or Birds of Prey, or something like that. Because my favorite part of the movie was the last 15 minutes, which is the only time the Birds of Prey are actually assembled. And like the interactions between them were great, I thought. And so I think you should have either like not promised the Birds of Prey in this movie, because I just spent the entire movie waiting for it, or just introduce them earlier. And it did feel like a bit of a reshooty kind of movie. You talked about Ewan McGregor, and I think it's like one of those things where they realized that people were going to like him too much. So there's one weird out of place, what I thought was out of place. I think you've disagreed with me on this, but
is it the scene
off where he makes this girl dance on a table, and he keeps on like making her dance, and she very clearly doesn't want to, and it's like this one scene where he's really, really evil, and he's got this like dark eye makeup
Super
on that he doesn't have else in any other scene in the movie, and it's like, it's misogyny, it makes you angry, it makes you hate him, but it's like it was filmed like a year later, because he's forgotten how to play the character. It feels so out of place. It just comes in the middle of like, it feels like a studio note that we need to hate Ewan McGregor more before the finale, so just add in a scene where he does something that makes you hate him.
There needs to be more of a threat from him.
Yeah.
Like, because otherwise the movie is just a bit kind of like, and we don't really get a sense that Harley is kind of in peril that much.
Yeah.
I really liked the girl power subtext to it, or maybe it's not really subtext, but what is subtext is the anti-male subtext, which I really enjoyed. If you watch that movie, like every male character is either straight up evil or like lets down the female characters. And I think that was really important, because this is the first, or not the first actually, but it's a female directed superhero film that was kind of birthed out of a very male dominated initial run in the DC universe, whatever it is. And there was that cool parallel that was like, it was weird because it's like DC are greenlighting a movie that's criticizing their own internal structures. But I liked that about it, and I really appreciated that, and that there was no, I don't know, it's over the top, but that's kind of what I enjoyed about it. And also, I really liked Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character, Huntress. I thought it was cool that she was not just a generic heroine, but she was awkward. Again,
it's like I would have just put her in the movie more, like have confidence in these new characters rather than having to be like, oh, you love Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, watch her for an hour and 20 minutes before you get to like really see these characters. Because like when they're fighting at this like fun house, and there's bits where like, they give each other like hair ties and stuff like that, and it's like these fantastic little moments that like only actress, like female actors and a female director would come up with those things.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that was like, it was the satisfying payoff, but I didn't think the journey was worth it. Like, but this is one of those movies that I enjoyed, I didn't love, but I'm excited for a sequel.
What did you guys think of Margot Robbie?
I think Margot Robbie is a great. I've always said this. Margot Robbie's a great casting as Harley Quinn. She wasn't really used to her full potential in Suicide Squad, but I'm perfectly happy with this being the Harley Quinn showcase. I thought she was great.
I think Margot Robbie's best performance as Harley Quinn is in The Wolf of Wall Street. Like, straight up, it was like, when it was like Margot Robbie's playing Harley Quinn and Suicide Squad, it was like, the from Wolf of Wall Street is like, just do that again. And then the changes she made was like, you had it.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, I think the accent was really cloying for me. Like, it took me out how kind of extremely broad kind of Brooklyn, New York accent it was. It was just like, I mean, I haven't seen Suicide Squad, so I don't know. But like, I think particularly because they started it with that cartoon at the beginning, it was like, the history of Joker and Harley Quinn. The whole beginning of the movie was done in a cartoon way. Yeah. It was just, and it was just this like, I mean,
I guess it just, to me, it doesn't feel as lived in as her.
No, it feels affected. It feels really affected, and like she's like, I want to, I don't know, and I feel like it was a direction thing as well. Because the thing is, Margot Robbie's freaking awesome. Like, she's an amazing actor, and so like I think it's no doubting her abilities. It's more that, and I think my problem with the portrayal of Harley Quinn is also with where they did the final fight scene. Like, they went into this sort of like cotton candy, like cartoonish funhouse. And I was just like, really? Like, I don't know. I just found it really tiresome and like a return to the kind of 1990s Batman, Batman and Robin kind of sense.
Nah. You just don't like comics. Like, if that's your problem with that scene.
I'm becoming acutely aware that like, this is a podcast of three straight white men, and we've just spent like 15 minutes bagging on Birds of Prey.
I haven't. I said it's great how anti-men it is. I'm in the clear.
I'm a cuck.
You two are the ones who've got splaining to do.
Yeah,
mansplaining to do.
I don't know. It's a 2.5 to 3 star movie with the potential for a really great sequel.
I think that all the supporting characters were the ones I enjoyed the most. Like, I really enjoyed the female cop. I thought she was
Montez,
and the driver.
Yeah,
those two were my favorite characters in the movie. I thought they were really cool, and I loved the relationship with the pickpocket girl. Yeah. That was really cool. So it's like the rest of it is kind of a crime movie. I really enjoyed. It was kind of like the flourishes that made it Harley Quinn.
The comic booky kind of thing.
Yeah, like I don't know, that because those were the bits that felt like a lived-in world, and then it was like the stuff.
Yeah, I guess my one sentence review would be that it's like an unfulfilled promise.
Yeah, and I would definitely watch the sequel because I think that there are things to explore in it. I just didn't really like it as a movie because I felt like it was.
Jeremy, AJ, do you want to give your closing statements?
I don't think it's going to get a sequel.
All right. Well, okay. If we'll end on AJ's negative note,
and now we've got 4 movies left to talk about. From this year?
So not long after Birds of Prey, we got Sonic the Hedgehog. Remember this was a big deal. Sonic.
God, video game movies have such a failure to launch. Like they've been famously bad for so long. And then the last 2 years, we've had Sonic the Hedgehog and Detective Pikachu, which everyone was like, this is going to break the curse. And then they fucking barely break the curse.
Yeah.
Like, it's so...
Yeah, it's not that they bomb. It's that they stumble across the line.
It's just that no one cares about them after they're released.
Yeah.
Overall, I would say I was mostly leaning toward negative on Sonic, but I also acknowledge that it's just a dumb kids movie. I think they could
that's the thing, yeah,
made more with it, I guess.
Yeah, like Detective Pikachu is like, it's it's got bits you'll enjoy, bits you won't, and it's like, but at the end of the day, it's kind of, it's one of those movies because obviously we're the generation that was raised on Pokemon. There is stuff in there for us, and it's kind of aimed not entirely towards kids. When people ask me, "Oh, is Sonic worth watching?" It's like you have to keep in mind it is just a kids movie.
It's Kangaroo Jack.
Yeah,
This is how people felt. This is how film critics who were our age felt in 2003 when they had to go review Kangaroo Jack for their movie blog. Like it's like when I saw Kangaroo Jack, I was 10 years old and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And it's like, well, cool. It achieved it. I'm sure kids loved Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. I do have like it's the positive things, I guess, that have stuck with me. Like, it is really fun seeing Jim Carrey act like that again.
It is fun, but do you know, everything you've just said about Birds of Prey, I think not everything, a lot of it could apply to Sonic, because similarly, Sonic the Hedgehog ends with Jim Carrey as full costume Dr. Robotnik in like this other dimension. And I left Sonic the Hedgehog, and then also, spoilers, blah, the mid-credit scene introduces Tails. And so, just like you with Birds of Prey, I'm going, I want to see the sequel to this movie. It sounds like it'll be way more interesting.
But the thing is that Sonic the Hedgehog wasn't called Sonic and Tails, a Sonic story.
Well,
it's like
maybe
game accurate Dr. Robotnik and Tails. That's the name of the movie.
Game accurate Dr. Robotnik.
I really enjoyed, as I said that, just watching your realization of like, oh shit, this was a terrible argument for me to make, just flash across your eyes.
No, yeah, I really liked watching your face and saw you realize how fucking wrong you were. You can't put words in my mouth to make me like admit I was wrong, Jeremy.
So
all
deny
it is, okay, sure, the title. You're just talking about the title. The title promises something else. My criticism that the sequel looks more interesting is still perfectly valid. I love that look on your face where you realized I was right. That's the most arrogant thing anyone has ever said to me. This is a dark podcast. It's a dark year.
Let's liven it back up by talking more about Sonic. So Sonic he can run really fast. One thing that's one thing that's funny about the Sonic movie, and it's like one of those classic, like, why did you pitch this? Is so Sonic is famous for being able to run long distances in a very short amount of time, but it's a road movie. They spend the entire time in a car, and there's one moment when they're in the car, and he like sprints to the coast and back in a matter of seconds, and it's like, you could have just done this trip. Like, you didn't need to do any of this.
Did they contrive a reason why he had to be in the car? They must have.
I think he needs James Marsden's directions.
You get
more or less it.
You get knee deep on like the fourth draft of the long sought after Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and you've written that it's a road movie, and they're both in a car, and you're just sitting there in your office at 2 a.m. and you're like, "Fuck."
That's actually it. But like, because
you know what Sonic doesn't have?
Could search every like square inch of San Francisco, which is where they're heading, in like the amount of time it would take James Marsden to start the car. It's insane.
You know what Sonic doesn't have? A cool vehicle.
Do you know what he does have? Gas, because he farts twice in the movie,
and he flosses.
Yeah, he flosses. He doesn't like
his weird, enormous human teeth.
He does. No, he doesn't floss his teeth.
Floss
he does
dance.
The Fortnite dance.
Right. Yeah. But like,
it's
also,
very funny.
How strong is Sonic? Because could Sonic have conceivably just carried James Marsden?
I would have killed James Marsden.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
My favourite take from Sonic, I think, was from Jenny Nicholson, who tweeted, "Anybody who said that James Marsden is an underrated hero actor can eat their words now, because he's terrible in Sonic."
Yeah,
he plays
I was like
the human character in this movie, and he's just real bad.
I was thinking when I was watching this, I was like, this is a kid's movie. What is James Marsden at this point in his career doing as the lead in a kid's movie?
Well, he's in Hop as well, which is another movie where he's in a car with a CGI character.
But the thing is that this sounds like a weird thing to say because it's a Sonic movie, but if you'd cast someone better in the James Marsden role, that's another star of, an added star to the overall rating of the movie. Like, if it had been a cool character actor that I actually cared about.
Who would you have cast? Fix Sonic.
Well, do I have more budget? Can I cast whoever?
No, they have to be the same star level as James Bond.
Well, that's the problem. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you cast, I don't know, any charismatic A-lister, it's automatically going to... Ben Schwartz. So just plays
do both.
Sonic and the human character.
Where is Seth Rogen? Because I would cast Seth Rogen in
Thomas
that role.
Middleditch.
Thomas Middleditch would have been great because he has rapport with Ben Schwartz.
Yes.
The weirdest thing about this movie, my biggest problem with Sonic, and Jeremy, while you were giving us a live play-by-play when you watched it the other day, you did bring this up, is that it starts with like, I'm Sonic, and here are my origins, and you see him as baby Sonic running around the Green Hill. Well, actually, no, Green Hill Zone is the human world, but he's running around his Sonic world, and the reason he enters the human dimension is because his adopted mother, who's an owl, is attacked by a bunch of ninjas, and she opens up a dimensional rift and throws Sonic through it. Now, when I saw this in the cinema, I was like, this is Sonic lore, right? This must...
Deep cut.
It's so specific. It's so specific and quirky and weird, like... Why is his mum an owl?
I do just have to ask, was his actually his mum, or is it like a maternal figure?
It felt like a mentor kind of...
Yeah, it's his adopted son, essentially.
Right, yeah, Wikipedia says his guardian.
His guardian. Yeah, so I just...
The Guardians of Valhalla, or what? You remember the owl movie? The Guardians?
Yeah. Some game designer in 1995 was writing a Sonic sequel and was like, and his mother is an owl because we need another animal character. I assumed everything in that opening scene was a reference to some Sonic lore deep cut. It wasn't. That was made up for the movie, and it never comes back. It's so weird. It's such a long... Like, you could just make his mum another hedgehog, and I would have never questioned it. It is so odd, man. It's the weirdest thing about the movie.
The other thing that's so bizarre is that when he comes to Earth, the things that he gets used to as like normal and like can understand are so random. Like, he's really into the romantic relationship between James Marsden and his girlfriend and the movies they watch, but he also doesn't know the term police officer. Like, he refers to James Marsden.
He's lucky.
Well, he's blue. But it was just super weird to me, the things that Sonic had like totally just understood about our world and like could either read or like hear all these things, and then he would just sort of randomly throw out these kind of cutesy like, I don't know the real phrase for this, and it was just like, I don't know. I mean, and I had to keep going, Jeremy, it's a kids movie, shut the fuck up, like just watch it.
It is rare that you, like, these days, watching like a movie like this that is purely a kids movie. Like, obviously, like AJ and I watch things for the podcast like Popture and things like that it's like, yeah, you watch it, you go into it knowing it's just a kids movie,
and that no one's going to care
and
about
there's certain
logic.
Movies that like when they come out and like big studio releases that okay, this is just a kids movie, you expect the odd joke for the parents, but Sonic, like, it is just a kids movie. It looked like it was going to be fun for the whole family,
and it probably should have been.
Yeah,
it's based on a 90s property. It probably should have appeal to adults.
And it's got Jim Carrey in it. It's like, you get people who loved Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so Sonic the Hedgehog. Better than Birds of Prey or nah?
No, come on, no.
They're next to each other in my ranking. But
they are, I think, no, they're not on mine. Never mind.
They're actually also next to each other in my ranking as well, but Sonic
I will
is below.
say this, I was saying to this to Jeremy before the pod, if you go to my Letterboxd ranking for the 9 movies I've seen in 2020, my top 6 I loved, and my 8 and 9 I hated, and then 7 is Sonic the Hedgehog. So it looks like I real fucking hated like Sonic the Hedgehog, but it's like, I don't hate it.
So, all right. Next up, we had same day and is Fantasy Island. Jeremy, you just watched this today, didn't you?
Oh man, I watched it today because I was just like, I'm interested. I'm interested in this idea of like Fantasy Island being a sort of a concept from a 60s TV show, was it?
Something like that.
And so they made, Blumhouse has made a horror out of it. It was way better than I thought it was going to be. It's not good. It's not great, but it was enjoyable. There were some good performances in it. Basically, the conceit is be careful what you wish for. That like Fantasy Island has this kind of like supernatural kind of weird ability to tell what you most desire. It's kind of like Mirror of Erised kind of thing. And so a whole bunch of like sort of Instagram type people.
Influencers.
Basically they get presented as they come off the plane at the beginning of the movie. They've all been invited onto this island because they're all kind of influencer kind of people. And they're kind of like here to test it out and kind of share it with their followers. And what's really weird about it is that all of the actors are just that little bit too old to be influencers. Like you can tell
because it's like Michael Pena.
Yeah. Well, no, because he's the guy who runs the island.
Oh, right.
But like they're all in their kind of like early to mid 30s, and you kind of go, the type of influences they were portraying are like college age,
right?
And it was weird that they were all slightly too old. But yeah, it was enjoyable. I won't say anything about it in terms of like the plot and stuff. I feel like the conceit of it is very simple, and then towards the end it gets very convoluted as to like how the magic of the island works or the supernatural stuff. It's just like, what are the rules around this? And I don't think it was completely clear, but still enjoyable. I would give, if you're a fan of thrillers / horrors, it's not too horror, like it's not super gross, but there's some really cool kind of moral quandary kind of stuff that goes on, and it was altogether more intelligent in places than it had any right to be. So yeah, I was surprised.
Also around that time we had Emma. I think both of you guys saw that.
Oh, it was great. Emma's so good.
This was my favorite of the year for a very long time.
Wow.
Me too, but not because it was that good. It was just because I didn't see any other movies for a long time. So this is, I said to you, Jeremy, when I saw this is such a Squarespace movie. The cinematography looks like Squarespace templates. Like it's all these like dulled pastel greens and things like that. It's so based off the Jane Austen novel, stars Anya Taylor-Joy. My favorite thing about it is that there is a scene where Emma and the main guy friend dance, and it's sort of the first spark of romance in their relationship, and it is a swelteringly sexy scene. It is. It's just them dancing, but the acting in it
barely touch.
Oh my god, it was electric. It's very sexy.
Very sexy.
Yeah.
I had reservations about this movie because of the aesthetic that you mentioned. Like it was such a tightly controlled aesthetic.
Yeah, every time I saw the trailer, I assumed it was for a TV show.
Yeah, and
interesting.
Generally, when I see such a sort of a vibey kind of remake of something like a classic Jane Austen property, I'm like, are they going to get carried away with the aesthetic of it to the detriment of the actual story and being true to what's in the novels? Because the funny thing about Jane Austen, the reason why her stories keep getting made over and over and over again is because
they're free to adapt.
They are free, but they are so good. Like they're just and the themes that she explores and the relationships and stuff like that, like what she has to say about love is just so true across time. And so Love is
the one thing that transcends space and time. So
that's from Emma.
And so I went in with like a little bit of trepidation, and I should not have worried at all because it was just so well done and so true to the text. And the cool thing is that Eleanor Catton, the Kiwi author, was the person who actually wrote the screenplay. And so
Jane Austen did all the heavy lifting.
Well, but that's the cool thing is that she actually did let Jane Austen do the heavy lifting because she basically just took most of the dialogue is just quotes directly out as much as possible out of the book. And there's several scenes that you cannot do Emma without. And she got all of those. She hit the right notes on all those scenes, and they were just it was great.
Shout out to her.
It was incredibly refreshing, and the direction was beautiful. And actually, I thought that the sort of really crisp, beautiful, perfect, because the idea behind it is that Emma is essentially a mean girl. Like, she is kind of the popular mean girl at high school, and the whole story of Emma is her realizing that she thinks of herself as a really nice person because everyone likes her, and then realizing that the reason everyone likes her is because she's got this amazing status in society, and that she needs to humble herself in order to be truly nice and truly good. And so the whole aesthetic of everything being perfect around her really worked as part of the story. So it was just great. I loved it. Loved it.
Very cool. AJ, any more to say on Emma?
The performances were so good. Like Johnny, is it Johnny Ivy? I think. Yeah.
Bill Nye.
No. Johnny, the guy who played.
He is good in it though.
Oh gosh, total mind blank. Played the main guy, Mr. Knightley.
You want me to look up Johnny?
He played
Ivy?
Mr. Knightley. He was amazing. And what was really cool is that I realized that I'd actually previously seen him in a Shakespeare's Globe version of Twelfth Night, which he was also awesome in. So that was great.
Johnny Flynn.
Johnny Flynn. Thank you.
I was going to say, I looked up Johnny Ivy, and he's he worked for Steve Jobs.
Oh, Johnny Ives, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there was, like I said, there was this big bunch. It was Birds of Prey, Sonic the Hedgehog, Fantasy Island, Downhill, that remake of Force Majeure.
I didn't watch that, but I did watch Force Majeure with my flatmates a couple months back. Have you guys seen it?
No, I mean, it came out years ago, so
it's
not really the time, but
it was an interesting thing to like watch this movie, which is very like, because like the trailer for Downhill, it's like that classic thing where like the American version of this harrowing Scandinavian film is just a dumb comedy, and it's like because I thought, based on the fact that Downhill stars Will Ferrell and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, that like the
and
original
is written and directed by Jim Rash and Nat Faxon.
I thought because of that, the original must also be like this quirky comedy. It's a drama. Like, it's a drama. It's, if you've never seen it, the kind of conceit of it is it's about a while on a ski resort, a father abandons his family during a controlled avalanche because he thinks it's going to kill them all, and that doesn't kill anyone, and it's the family sort of coming to terms with the fact that they have a real life application that their father would leave them behind to
as a total coward.
Yeah. And it's not funny. It's not a funny movie in the slightest. So don't watch Downhill because it doesn't look very good. Do watch Force Majeure. It's very interesting.
All right. Emma, The Call of the Wild, and The Invisible Man. I'll just finish my list that I was midway through. Those were the films released early on video on demand that had a theatrical release. But the last of those, The Invisible Man. We all saw this, and I saw this, and I was like, "This is the first like great movie of the year." I think. This was fantastic. It's it's an updated version of like the classic horror monster, but this one is all about it has themes of domestic abuse. Elizabeth Moss's character has been abused by her partner. She finally manages to escape from him, and then finds out that he's supposedly died. But then she ends up being stalked by an invisible version of him because he had been working on this suit that would make him appear invisible. And so it is this like very kind of creepy thing, and you're not supposed to really know if like what's going on, like if she is really being stalked or if it's all in her head. And then, obviously you get clues and evidence that it's like actually happening. And then the end of it kind of turns into like a proper monster movie where there's a very tangible bad guy that they're taken down. But what did you guys think of it?
Yeah, it's very cool. I thought it was awesome. Jeremy, did you like it?
I freaking loved it, man.
That's interesting because I was re-listening to our dumbest looking films of the 2020 podcast the other day, and you were so dark on this. You were like, oh yeah, whatever. And I was like, it looks very timely. And you were like, timely doesn't mean good. So
it doesn't necessarily, but it can.
But yeah, that is why a lot of this is good, I think, is that in the cultural conversation around believing the victim is an extremely palpable theme in this film. And it's great because it requires you as a passive audience member to believe a victim without necessarily proof of certain things, which I thought was a cool way of emulating that process in a film way.
I thought it was pretty amazing the thing that really got me and is when a film can build an atmosphere. Like when film builds tension and atmosphere through the way, not through necessarily anything a character says or does, but through the way the film is actually being made. And I just, from the very moment that this film opened, when she's in bed and she wakes up and she's looking around and like all this sort of stuff, I mean, I guess I did go into it knowing that this was kind of an allegory, had
There's
themes
an
of domestic
overwhelming
violence
sense
and
of
stuff.
dread.
But I think that even if you'd gone into this with no idea about what this was going on, you would absolutely understand from like 30 seconds in that this was a woman who was afraid of her husband and needed to get out. There's a part of me that because the only time in the whole movie where you see the husband actually be violent is the moment where he runs at the car and he smashes in the window as she's escaping at the very beginning of the movie. And
and you see him be violent several other times later in the film.
Well, no, but it could be his brother later in the film. And so that's the only time. But it is confirmation that he is violent through what you see and what another character sees in the film. And it's almost like I would have... There's a part of me theoretically that would have loved that not to be the case, and that the entire presentation of him as a domestic abuser is just through the lens of how she's reacting to him.
You would
and what
get a
she
lot
says to other
of
people.
male reviewers that would have...
I know, and fuck those guys. That's
Jeremy. If I may, I think that is in there because if you remember, the resolve of the film is that he's like, no, it wasn't me, it was my brother. I was kidnapped this whole time.
Yeah,
and she's like,
the only time in the movie that you actually he is violent. He runs after her.
I think you did make that point, and I think you should let AJ finish.
Sorry.
What I'm saying is that that he claims he's locked away, and everyone believes him except for Elizabeth Moss's character. And the end
audience,
of the film,
because we saw that part.
At the end of the film is she kills him, and you, the audience, this is what I was saying before, the audience have to decide if you believe that he was the Invisible Man as well as his brother was, or is Elizabeth Moss a remorseless murderer, or did she kill him for the wrong reasons? And I think you're supposed to believe Elizabeth Moss was right, but the fact it doesn't confirm that, I think, is where it puts the responsibility on you.
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I never saw it as ambiguous in any way. I 100% was like, yep, he's a bad guy all along.
Sure, but the film doesn't.
I didn't see that as like at the end. It's like, oh, you're supposed to not know. It was like,
oh, really?
Yeah,
well, it's not that
I
you're
saw
supposed
that
to
as
not know. It's that you're supposed to believe her without any tangible evidence. I think is more.
Yeah, I guess I just believe victims.
Well, so do I. I'm saying that's the point.
I'm more woke than you.
I'm not saying. Why do you do this to me? Why do you do this to me? I'm just pointing out the subtext of the film, and you're making it sound like I'm trying to be some hero. I'm not.
We're all trying to be the good guy here, okay? No, the other thing that I really liked the other theme that I really liked was this, I think a return after Iron Man to this idea of, basically,
bizarre film. No. Since Iron Man.
Look, it's a post-Iron Man film, The Invisible Man.
But basically, that Iron Man introduced this idea of, essentially the rich, Elon Musk type, amazing inventor who has all the money and stuff like that, as inherently, and the creator of any technology that would make him streets ahead of anyone as automatically the good guy. And I think it's fascinating to be this guy created something that no one else even knows about or could even imagine, and he is the bad guy. That kind of power and that kind of invention and technology in the hands of someone by himself independently with no oversight actually is terrifying. And I think that's another theme that I really like, is just
it's
that
more
is
realistic.
fucking terrifying.
One thing that my one kind of issue with this movie is it does if these two characters would just have a conversation, the the plot wouldn't happen. Not the domestic abuse, obviously, but there's a moment where from the main character's account, the Invisible Man sends an email to her sister being like, fuck you, I don't want you in my life. And the sister's like, right, I know you've been through a lot of shit and you almost died, but get the fuck out of my life. I can't believe you would send that email. And it's like, are you fucking stupid? Like, just listen to your sister for 5 seconds. She's trying to, like, it obviously wasn't her.
That scene in the restaurant, man.
Best part of the film. Like that
Shit,
reveal in the restaurant. Obviously, if you know the film, you know what we're talking about. If not,
spoil the ending.
won't
I mean,
spoil
you
it.
just spoiled the ending
middle.
and said that she kills him at the end. Like,
I didn't spoil that.
I only did that because you said, but it could be her brother, which is also spoiling the ending.
Again, I didn't say that. Was
You did say that. You
The
did
thing
say
is,
that.
when
I
people
didn't.
listen to these
She also
podcasts,
said it could be
Exactly.
her brother, and I said, oh yeah.
they know these are spoiler podcasts.
But it's a Russian
I'm without
roulette of
some.
spoilers. We didn't spoil Birds of Prey.
You spoiled
Spoiled
Doolittle, though.
Sonic, though.
You spoiled Doolittle.
We did spoil the fact that Sonic flosses in
And Tails
Sonic,
turns up.
and that Tails appears, which is potentially the biggest spoiler.
Would you have been mad if someone had spoiled that for you beforehand?
That Sonic flosses.
No, that Tails is in Sonic.
If I cared about Sonic, I would have. I actually, to be fair, I actually think I knew going into it that Tails appeared. I think
Wow.
I'd read it. Yeah, Invisible Man, great.
Very
It's a good
great.
movie. Very good.
The moment, that first moment where the breath fog appears is that's so good.
Yeah.
It's just
Hell yeah.
mood.
So, same day as that, we had Guns Akimbo. I've spoken about this a couple of times already.
You've spoken about this so many times.
I feel like I have seen this movie 4 times, given how many times I've heard you talk about this movie.
Are you guys done?
Are you done? Are you done repeating what you have to say about this movie?
What did I repeat?
That's not very good.
I didn't say that just then. I said same day we had Guns Akimbo, and you guys took that as a chance to abuse me.
Well, guys, I had a chance to see this movie early this year.
It was last
All
year.
I was going to say was Guns Akimbo was. I've spoken about that before. If you want to know what I thought, you guys haven't seen it. But if you want to know what I thought, there's 2 other podcasts you can listen to about it.
What'd you think?
Well, I'm not going to say now. Jeremy, I invite you into my home. AJ, I invite you into my heart. And this is how the 2 of you treat me.
Yeah.
To be honest, though, it is no less than how you treat us too as well. So, we love you too.
I treat you with nothing but love.
Nothing but love.
Should we talk about Onward?
Onward.
All right, so Onward actually got a limited theatrical release here. It was one of those. It came out like right on the cusp of the lockdown and everything like that. But it was released earlier in the States, so it had like a full theatrical run then. But it did land early on Disney Plus, so we were able to watch it there. And again, this was the second great movie of the year, I thought. And this was one that I went into knowing the general consensus was, oh yeah, it's good for a DreamWorks film. Which genuinely is like, most people will tell you that's what they thought of it. This is fantastic. I thought this was amazing. I loved it.
I
Yeah.
loved it so much. So this is, if you didn't catch the joke, it's not DreamWorks, it's Pixar. Which, we deal in high Pixar on this podcast. When did I say that? I said that on the Patreon, the Wall-E episode we just released on Patreon. I was like, when have I said this before? So it's Pixar, which I always like mark in my calendar. This was like an appointment viewing. My lockdown bubble and we got everyone into the lounge to watch it one evening, and I think that it starts, and I was like, "This is all right for a DreamWorks movie for the first
Very good.
maybe act." And then as it kicks into gear and stuff starts happening, I was like, "It's pretty good." And then by the end, I was on the verge of tears, feeling very fulfilled by this movie. This has been, at the moment, this is my number 1 of the year.
Same.
I loved it. I thought it was so good. And also, we don't do this very often anymore, but really cool title bomb in this movie.
Yes.
Really liked the title bomb, which is when he's in one of the characters. So it's a fantasy world where the goblins... Are they goblins? What are they? Elves? And they go on a road trip, but it's like an urban fantasy world. And when they're trying to speed away from some bad guys or whatever, Chris Pratt's character, Barley, who's the older brother, yells at Tom Holland's character, whose name I can't remember, Ian, and says, push it to O for onward. And I thought that was very cool. That was so long to explain. I didn't need to explain all of that.
Yeah, it's a very, it's a road movie, although the characters can't travel faster than the speed of light in this one, so it makes sense that they would travel in a car. To me, it's everything you'd want in a Pixar movie.
It's the thing that Pixar do so well is they introduce you to a new world and then they explore it for all it's worth. And I love that. Like, they don't leave stuff on the floor or, leave stuff on the table that they could have explored. So they set up like, hey, it's a fantasy world. It has magic, but people have kind of neglected it. And I also like that theme as well, that people like neglect magic because they've got electricity and kind of all that sort of stuff. And there's, parallels for our modern life as well, with the things that we undervalue, like relationships and that sort of thing. And just rediscovering the magic in the world was just really fun. Like, and the stuff like, turning Chris Pratt's character tiny for a while, and like just all these little things that happen, and like Pixar manages to do it in a way that just makes sense for story all the time. They do cool stuff. Like DreamWorks would also do cool, shiny, fun little tricks. But then Pixar does it in such a way that it makes story sense to do it that way as well.
Yeah.
And I have so much respect for the storytelling. And as the movie went on, I was like, oh, wow, that's what they're doing. This is, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's some pretty deep theme shit there.
And I think that's the difference between if this was a DreamWorks film, is that it's a fantasy world, but it's our modern society. That would be a gimmick in a DreamWorks film, and in a Pixar film, it drives the story, and it's all based in that world building. And also,
if it was a DreamWorks movie, they just would have gone on an adventure to find something. But this was inherently tied into like the deepest hopes and dreams of each character.
And it would have had like Shrek in it or something.
Yeah. I have 3 good scenes that I like. The idea of 3 good scenes and no bad ones means a good film. I have 3 good scenes for this film that I want to point out.
Do you have any bad ones?
I don't think there are any bad ones, but I will say that the not even the whole first act, but the introductions in this movie, it was like I could kind of see, as I said, I could kind of see what people were talking about. And like the amount of times they mentioned that the dad is dead is like, okay, yep, that's the story. The dad's dead. That's where we're going from. But 3 good scenes I really liked. They bring back the dad, but only in leg form here. He's only a pair of legs. And there's this one part where during like a sibling argument between the 2 brothers, the legs turn on some music and start doing a dad dance, and it's very cheesy and very like, it's such a dad thing, like it really tapped into that. I really liked the scene where they do a spell to make them look like they are they're the centaur policeman, and the only way the only way that spell will break would be if you tell a lie, and the inevitable lie that Ian tells is that he doesn't think his brother's a loser, and his brother's like helping him. What a scene, right? What a cool way to communicate that sort of tension. And oh my god, my heart sang when the dragon they had to fight at the end was the painted cartoon dragon on the mural of the school. Perfect fucking idea, man. It could have just been a real dragon.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, cool. But it's like, it's a mural you've seen earlier in the film, and it's so goofy, and it's one of those things where it's like, this whole scene has like a layer of comedy over it.
Yeah.
Because the dragon looks so silly. And I loved that. It was that was like oh my god, this is actually top shelf Pixar for me now.
Yeah.
When that happened.
Yeah, I genuinely, to me, it's like top half.
Oh yeah, I rated it 10. That's my 10th favorite
Wow.
Pixar film.
Yeah, Onward. Like, don't be put off by what everyone says about it. Check it out and make up your own
I
mind.
did just spoil what happens.
Yeah.
There's something that I really love about just when cartoon movies can do a cartoon in the world of a cartoon. Like, like the dragon face on the front of the dragon being cartoonish in a world that is made up of cartoons.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. It was really interesting watching this because Gemma and I sat down and watched it together. My wife.
Thank you.
And she
Fish.
hated this movie. She hated it. And it was like this really weird. We generally like the same sort of stuff. And it was just this. She was just like, oh, this is awful. And I was like, no, it isn't. It's amazing. And it was
I had the opposite experience with my life partner.
my life partner.
Where I was like, because she had said previously that like she didn't really care about it, didn't want to see it, and so it was like it was a Sunday night or whatever, and I was like, I'm gonna watch Onward, like you don't have to watch it kind of thing. She was like, oh no, just chuck it on, and she'll just do something on her phone. And then like 15-20 minutes into it, she like ended up like putting down her phone and got really into the movie, which. Yeah, it was expecting. She wasn't expecting to like it. She was expecting to just half pay attention to it, but ended up like really liking it, and I think crying.
I think the biggest thing for Gemma was that, and this is, please, if you have not seen the movie, like massive spoilers here, but she has had multiple friends who've had their fathers die, and so for her, the idea that you could have a character whose father died, and the whole point, the biggest desire that they have is to actually spend some time and to see their dad. Like she can kind of feel that personally. And so the lesson that kind of like his brother was good enough all along and kind of was that father figure, and that his way of loving his brother was to allow him to have that time. Like she just couldn't meet the sort of added story
to
element
me,
of
it
that.
wasn't so much like the movie does tell you, oh, my brother was good enough, but to me, I think that the lesson, what I got from it was more that it was like he deserves this more than I do.
Yeah, I love my brother, so actually I don't realize that he has a sort of longing for our dad that's even greater than mine.
Yeah.
And so I'm willing to sacrifice on behalf of him, which is a greater form of love.
Yeah.
How mature is that storytelling as well?
I know.
It's
This
very
is a kids
satisfying,
movie.
yeah.
No other kids movie is going to end it with the main character not talking to the father at the end, because you, as the audience, don't actually see it either. And to me, I was like, God, it reminded me of, it's similar to how we've talked before about how like Toy Story 4 is quite mature storytelling and sort of the way it divvies out the roles in the film. Again, like that to me, I was just like, this is so rare. It's because it could be perceived, as it sounds like Gemma did perceive it, as kind of a downer ending. It's the main character not actually getting the Holy Grail.
What's like you'd think it would be unsatisfying.
Yeah. But because there's it's just such a maturity and understanding of character and prioritizing character beats over traditional storytelling functions.
I would be
very cool.
really interested to know, like, people who actually have children who have watched this movie, like how the kids respond to that, and whether or not that's actually something that they sort of like grab onto and appreciate, or whether it's something that disappoints them.
Well, hopefully it sparks conversation, because I think that's the most valuable thing you could get out of that.
Yeah.
Is that it's a actually a conversation about what matters. And
All right, and now moving on
Speaking of conversation,
to you'd think so. That's the first week of March we're up to, and so it's the end of June now. So you would think, oh shit, they've probably got a long way to go. Well, get ready for me to say the word delayed a lot. Because a lot of these films have been delayed. March 13th, we were supposed to get My Spy. That's the Dave Bautista hanging out with a little girl movie.
that you have to do as an ex-wrestler who's become an actor.
Yeah. And that's one that was supposed to come out in August of last year. And like 3 times a week before it was supposed to be released. It got delayed, but it ended up coming out today. So
did anyone see it? Anyone see it?
No one saw it. And A Quiet Place Part 2, this was the first big one that I remember being like, oh shit, they're serious about this coronavirus thing. Because like the week before that was supposed to come out, it got delayed to September 4th this year. Mulan was delayed to July 24th. Peter Rabbit 2 delayed to August, and then again delayed to January next year. New Mutants has been delayed to August.
Hey, New Mutants!
I hope we never see it. See it.
No Time to Die. This was a massive spanner in the works for AJ and I, who planned an entire podcast, like weeks of a podcast.
Well, no, like multiple months of your life were planned around this.
To watching these Bond films to tie into No Time to Die. That was delayed to mid-November. Trolls World Tour. Now, this is a really interesting one because this is potentially one of the most important films ever released.
You keep saying that, and I never remember to ask why. I am out of the loop on this. Can you please explain?
So, Trolls World Tour was supposed to get a theatrical release, and then they said, you know what? We could probably still make money on this movie if we release it on video on demand. And so they did. They made a lot of money from it. I think it made more money on VOD than the first one did in cinemas. And it's like, obviously, it's special circumstances. It's a new movie on VOD, so it's like, and they haven't had a chance to see it before, and it's one of the only new movies at the time. So,
and everyone was locked inside their houses with their children.
It doesn't translate to it would have made this much in the cinema, not by a long shot. But and then the head of Universal was like, it did pretty good. So we could, like, I'm not opposed to the idea of skipping theatrical releases for future movies. And the 2 largest cinema chains in the US said, we're never playing another Universal film in our cinemas. Now, this isn't some small indie studio they're gonna miss out on 6 films in the next 20 years. Like, Universal, like, this is a fucking huge studio. And they've probably rescinded their statements now, but like the 2 largest cinema chains in the US saying we're never playing another Universal film, regardless of whether or not. So that's like Jurassic World Dominion wouldn't play in most cinemas in the US, just because of what this guy said. Now, I don't think that boycott is going to go ahead, but it is really interesting that. Because one thing that's coming out of this coronavirus pandemic is people saying that it's killed the mid-budget film. And on the last 2 podcasts, I've said we're in the golden age of the mid-budget film right now, because there are these studios like Blumhouse that did Fantasy Island that are able to fund these things. But now it's like, indie films that it's like, yeah, fuck it, we'll give it a theatrical release because it's cheap, or like big-budget blockbusters. It's like we're seeing what feels like a massive change. And if you are to, in 10 years' time, if film releases look different in any way, like if it's only big event films or little indie films that end up getting theatrically released, the film that it'll be traced back to will be Trolls World Tour.
Wow. A movie that I am so out of the loop on. If you'd said, is it a sequel? I'd be like, well, it sounds like it's a sequel.
Just to not to completely actually what you just said, but basically Universal said going forward we want to premiere on digital at the same time as we release in theaters, and AMC Theaters said we will not release films that have a digital premiere at the same time as in theaters. If you don't respect the window of like theatrical release, then we won't do it. It's not that because of this we will never show another. It's just if you want to go forward with a digital release at the same time as theaters, then we won't do it on those terms.
I think it's still really interesting that it's kind of like the first shot fired from cinemas to streaming services. Like, you've heard enough, Spielbergs and shit like talk about how like Netflix is ruining the art of film. This is the first time I've heard of cinema as an industry, like cinemas talking about this.
Yeah. Like the CEO of an actual cinema chain being like, no, fuck off.
Yeah.
But it's like,
I'm on the side of Universal, though, 100%.
oh, totally. Well, it's like, the thing is that, the film made at least $40 million in its first weekend on VOD.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to give any of that money to a theater chain.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things like chains like the Alamo Drafthouse and stuff in the States, and obviously like a lot of indie cinemas that I hold near and dear to my heart in Auckland. Like those ones, it's like, yeah, they respect the cinema experience, but like these like Regal and AMC and shit like that, it's like by all accounts, it's they don't care. It's just money making machines, and it's like, if you're not working to actually make me, like, if you're not putting in the work to make going to the cinema a good experience, then you deserve to die. It's the same thing as like taxis versus Uber. It's like, if something better for the consumer comes along, yeah, it's like boo fucking who that like people are using Uber now. I mean, not that Uber is like a perfect service, but it's a competitor has come along that you haven't had for, like, you've gone like a century without any competitors in this business, and now one comes along and you just go, and it's like, you need to adapt or die. Like, I love the cinema going experience, and I truly do like the idea of like actually going down and sitting in a cinema and just being fully absorbed by a film is like one of my favorite pastimes. But you need to work to make sure you're preserving that, because TVs are getting bigger and cheaper, and it's so much easier to replicate that at home. You have to be competitive.
Yeah, and that's Trolls World Tour.
So, Promising Young Woman, we also talked about, which had a quite cool looking trailer. That's currently unscheduled, may never come out. Bad Trip, this is a really funny one. Like, this is one's just funny to mention. This was the Eric Andre, Tiffany Haddish, Lil Rel Howery movie where it's like pranks interspersed with like real, like dramatized comedy sketches kind of things.
Oh yeah.
Like scripted and unscripted. This was due to come out on Amazon Prime on April 17th, but then was delayed because of the coronavirus pandemic. And then it accidentally got uploaded to Amazon Prime anyway on April 17th. And then it was taken down shortly after, but it's obviously available on like Pirate Bay or whatever now. But then in May, Netflix bought the rights to it. So it'll come out on Netflix sometime in the future, but it was available for a short amount of time because obviously, they went, we'll delay it, but they forgot to actually just like flip the switch.
Yeah, the intern like just went home without changing it.
Yeah. Okay, so much of other delays. Black Widow delayed till November 6th, which is taking the Eternal spot, so we're only getting one Marvel film this year. Greyhound, the Tom Hanks war film, that's going to be releasing on Apple TV Plus on July 10th. Legally Blonde 3 is delayed indefinitely. The Personal History of David Copperfield is delayed till August 14th.
Which I'm gutted because it's come out in the UK already, and by all accounts, it's amazing, and I can't wait to see it.
And next one that wasn't delayed, another one that skipped the theatrical release and went straight to video on demand, is SCOOB.
We're up to SCOOB already?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Like, we're actually like almost done.
This is what this podcast should be every year. That
I mean, don't get too excited. We've still been going for well over an hour.
Yeah, but
that's okay.
SCOOB. AJ and I have made a little video. It was the first episode of a new series we're doing, ready to record, available every 2 weeks on the Popture YouTube channel.
We've switched to a fortnightly release.
Just after announcing it was actually officially announcing it as a weekly series, we've now switched to a fortnightly release.
We've made a huge mistake.
So SCOOB. Jeremy, did you watch this in the end?
I watched the first 5 minutes of this and I was like, fuck this, I cannot be bothered watching this.
Yeah, it's a bizarre movie.
If you told me after I watched Dolittle that there'd be a challenger for the prize of worst movie in years, I'd be like, nah. And then SCOOB comes along and God, it might be worse than Dolittle. It's more consistent than Dolittle. It doesn't have a weird ending.
I had a better time with SCOOB, I think. Because SCOOB at least isn't boring when it's bad, I think.
Yeah.
The animation is just so bad, though. It just...
that's the least bad thing about it,
That's the best thing about it.
Well, yeah, sorry, I did only watch 5 minutes of it, so I will hand over the rubbishing of this movie to you guys, but just to record, it is just so bad.
We could pull up the script for Ready to Record and just do a live reading of it.
What? Is that scripted?
It is like... It's
Shut up, Jeremy.
It's not a Scooby-Doo movie. Like when if I said, "Oh, there's a new Scooby-Doo movie," you'd be like, "Oh, cool." So you're gonna have the team, the mystery machine. They're gonna solve a mystery. That doesn't happen in this film. Most of the film, they're split up. And there's no central mystery. There's much like the search for Santa Paws, there is only a very small window of time where they're actually doing the thing that you expect them to do in the film.
Who needs an origin story for the gang? No one needed an origin story for like,
the origin
how did
story is only the first
Scooby-Doo
5
get
minutes,
his
who
name?
cares?
How did Scooby-Doo and Shaggy first become friends?
Yeah, I mean that takes up 5 minutes of the film, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm working with
Jeremy's
what I've
like,
got
the
here.
whole movie is this. Also, how Scooby-Doo got his name is a pretty good joke.
Yeah.
Where it's like, Scooby, Dooby, Doo? Like, that is how the name probably was invented, was on the spot.
Oh, well, if he's got a middle name, then they can't press charges. That was
actually,
so
you're right. This
awful.
movie was pretty good.
No, okay. Overall, this movie is terrible because it's just, as you say, it's not a Scooby-Doo movie, and what it is just...
It's the Avengers of the Hanna-Barbera universe, but we haven't had anything to introduce them.
Well, okay, but the thing is, when people talk about... When people talk about the Avengers of another cinematic universe, right? This is the first time where I've actually seen another team up movie that wasn't a superhero movie, and you watch it and you go, when you say it's the Avengers of Hanna-Barbera, I presume you mean it's because they're teaming up and not because it's a superhero story that involves superhero tropes and superhero story structure. But it is just trying to be a superhero movie. The Scooby-Doo is about, like, ghosts and crime and unmasking villains and spooky theme parks. This movie is about opening the gates to Hades. Literally, I'm not speaking in florid, like, I'm not making a metaphor. The plot of the movie is Dick Dastardly wants to open a portal to Hades. Cerebus, the three-headed dog, Cerberus, is in this movie. Like, it's about Greek mythology. Why?
It's fucking bananas, and it's one of those movies that I'm like, why are not more people not talking about how much this sucks? Like, if you go on the Scooby-Doo subreddit, people are like, oh, you know what, it wasn't perfect, but I loved it. It's like, what the fuck?
What do you want, Scoob stands? You pathetic. Scoob stands have no backbone. That's not true. Actually, no. I actually met in my short career as a film tutor, I've met some Scooby-Doo aficionados, people who love Scooby-Doo, which I didn't know was enough of a thing that you could be. And they actually helped me write the Scoob script for Ready to Record. Like, if I needed information, I wanted to make sure what I was saying was correct about like Scooby-Doo lore, so they helped me with that.
All right, so The Woman in the Window is also being delayed indefinitely. Now, Fast and Furious 9, which I was bullied into taking off my most anticipated list, and then days later, the trailer came out, and then it shot to number 1 of my most anticipated list.
Justice for Han!
Is now coming out April 2nd, 2021. And again, that was another one that was like, oh, fuck, they're really taking this seriously, because it's like it delayed a whole year.
Isn't it there reports that F9 is about a disease, like a pandemic?
I hadn't heard that.
I've heard that it's like, not only does it have to be delayed because no one can go to the theater, but its subject matter is very like, ooh.
That's full like spiderweb between the Twin Towers level. Like,
yeah.
A reference to the
Spider-Man.
teaser
He's not
trailer
just-
for the original Spider-Man film.
Yeah, Jeremy isn't just referencing nothing.
But yeah, and also we didn't know it at the time, but it is called F9: The Fast Saga.
for 9.
So SpongeBob movie Sponge on the Run, that is going to skip its theatrical release and release on CBS All Access in early 2021.
Thank God, finally a reason to subscribe.
Who fucking benefits from this apart from CBS All Access? Not only oh god, we have to wait so long for it. It's like, it's moronic.
How badly do you want to see it?
Well, now that it's taken away from me, it's all I want. Artemis Fowl. Jeremy, you watched this the other day, didn't you?
How did you guys
skipped theatrical and went to Disney Plus?
I'm very disappointed that none of you watched Artemis Fowl. Although,
That's
given
the
my
thing.
review of it,
No, there's the thing. After Dolittle and Scoob, I couldn't take yet another worst movie in years movie, dude. Like, I can't believe the reception this got. But take it away. I haven't seen it. I haven't read the books.
The reception it got.
it is genuinely baffling. Like, I like what's
Have
really.
you read the book?
No, I haven't read the book. I never consumed any media about Artemis Fowl, but until this movie. And well, I mean, I knew that it had a shockingly bad Rotten Tomatoes score before I watched it, so I was kind of prepared for how bad it was going to be, but I was not prepared for how bad it was going to be. The thing that's really crazy about it is that since watching the movie, I've read about the character of Artemis Fowl and kind of the fact that he's meant to be kind of like a villainous kind of character. Like, he's not the good guy in the first few books.
He's the bad guy.
He's the bad guy.
Duh.
But I didn't like in the movie. He is the protagonist, and they want him to be this likable kid that you're just a classic, Harry Potter-esque kind of like, we're impressed by how amazing this protagonist is. And at the very beginning of the movie, they basically just go like, it's all in voiceover, and it's bloody Josh Gad is at the beginning of the movie that Josh Gad is kind of like taken prisoner, and then the entire movie is narrated by him, and he's in the interview room in this kind of like, CIA offsite kind of dark space sort of place, and he's narrating things that you would never ever tell, like, bother telling someone in an interview room kind of space. It's just pure plot contrivance to get him to say things over the top of visuals. But he's like, Artemis Fowl is the most intelligent boy who's ever lived. He like graduated college at like age 4 with 3 degrees and like all this sort of stuff. And then there's like, B-roll footage of Artemis Fowl like surfing off the coast of Ireland, which you're just like, holy shit, that'd be so cold. And so not only is he like super intelligent, he's also like super cool and like rides surfboards and stuff. And like, you're kind of, there's this idea that he's smarter than any adult. And then for the rest of the movie, he's just some dumb kid. Like, he's just honestly like, all through the movie, he like, people do things and he's like, what? What's that? Like, just any other child protagonist. And I'm like, no, this kid's meant to be the smartest human alive. And he's just some dumb kid. It was just, yeah. And,
One thing that I don't follow, having not read the books, is everyone's like, oh, it's supposed to be about like a teenage Bond villain, like a 12-year-old Bond villain, and that's what's the kind of the hook of the story. All the trailers have like goblins and fairies in it. Those two things don't match up. That's a different thing. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it's not, I'm acting like this is some big sin that's committed. It's probably not. It just feels like a disconnect.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole idea is that like the sort of he's meant to be a human, a calculating kind of villainous kind of Bond villain. Like, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm always 3 steps ahead of you. But he does exists in a world in which there is the human world and the fairy world. It's kind of like the classic like Gaelic kind of Irish fairy kind of myths, like the sort of early England kind of awareness of sprites and fairies and that sort of stuff. And they live in like the underground world. And the whole fairy thing is that they don't want any humans to have any knowledge of their existence. And so what's really weird also is that like it's supposed to be like sort of fairy magic, but it's this very kind of steampunky technology. Their magic is kind of like just really like they've got better tech than humans, and so they can fly because they've got better tech. And I'm like, this doesn't really feel like magic. It just feels more like technology. I don't know if that's in the book or not, but it just was real like, oh, I thought fairies would feel more magical rather than kind of like futuristic. Anyway, it was just bollocks. Like it was just all just so bollocks.
Yeah. So you recommend or nah?
I mean, if you hate yourself and you also, if you're someone who loved Artemis Fowl, the book, and want to see, I mean, because the thing is, if I had read the books and I had heard that the movie was terrible, I'd have to hate watch the movie.
Yeah.
So just go for it and hate it.
All right. Wonder Woman 1984 is delayed till October 2nd. Candyman, delayed to the remake, is delayed to September 25th. Soul, the second of 2 Pixar movies this year, delayed to November 20th. And King of Staten Island, which was on my most anticipated of the year, skipped its theatrical release and released on video on demand a couple of weeks ago. So this is the semi-autobiographical Pete Davidson movie directed by Judd Apatow. Judd Apatow's 6th film he's directed, which is great. Seems like he's done more.
Now, you both have seen this.
Yep.
I have not, and I would like to, and therefore I am requesting maybe we could trade. If you guys don't spoil this, I will try to talk about Da 5 Bloods with as much vagueness as I can in return.
All right. I'll agree to that. So King of Staten Island is, well, it's like, even without getting into any kind of plot details, the reason I was looking forward to this is I am so intrigued by Pete Davidson. I've
that big dick energy, isn't it?
Actor like that, who, like, it's like, is he fucking the ugliest person I've ever seen, or is he like super handsome? Is he the worst actor I've ever seen, or does he have an amazing screen presence? And it's like, I cannot tell. And like, scene to scene, I'll flip-flop between the two. And the thing I got out of this movie is I just want to consume all Pete Davidson content because I have to figure it out. And I loved this movie. I really liked it. Again, this is another movie that the general consensus was like, yeah, it's all right for a Judd Apatow movie. Then it's like, yeah, it's 20 minutes too long, and yeah, it's not very funny or whatever. And it's like, yeah, like I didn't really mind the length of it, and it's like it is a reasonably long movie, and you do feel the length a little bit, but I enjoyed the length of it. Jeremy's cackling for some reason.
It's because you said you enjoyed the length of it, and it sounds like you're talking about a penis.
Is that it, Jeremy?
I played the fifth.
Okay, all right.
I could have said that's what she said like 4 times than what you were just talking, but I decided not to.
Right.
But then you drew attention to the fact that I was trying to avoid saying
funny,
that.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've lost my train of thought. Now,
you enjoyed the length of it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the length of it. I enjoyed how deep it went. that was just you guys.
How it hollowed me out on the inside.
What do you want us to say?
But yeah, and also it's a drama with some funny moments. It's not a comedy, I would say. It's not. Don't go into it expecting like a laugh a minute. It's like, it's a very interesting character piece. Again about losing a father, like Onward. But I just find Pete Davidson is just such a fascinating person to watch, and he has this screen presence. He's the kind of person that if I met him, I would be so desperate for him to like me. Like, he just, you want to be his friend, or you want to impress him.
Sounds like our first encounter, Richard.
Oh.
But now look, you won because now you do a podcast with me, and the dynamic is very much in your power.
Tell that to our fans.
Dominant. It's interesting because I came at it from pretty much the exact opposite point of view to you, where I generally can't stand Pete Davidson, and I think he's an absolute dumbass.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, I feel like that's
also
not the opposite.
Love him. No, I mean, I didn't really expect much from this movie at all. In fact, what I did expect was I'd probably find it annoying and that Pete Davidson would just annoy me. And in the first 5 minutes, I mean, I have this terrible habit when I know that Richard or AJ have already watched the movie. I will just basically live Facebook message them while I'm watching it.
He's right. It is annoying.
And I hadn't seen this movie. And you kept saying jokes, and I was like, well, there's that joke ruined.
No, I didn't. I purposely did not send these messages to you, AJ. I just sent them to Richard.
I saw a couple of them.
Well, I
showed AJ. I was like, look what Jeremy said to me.
Well, not my fault. No, but I mean, I just started out this movie being like, ugh, yeah, Pete Davidson. And then I just got swept away. And
you were like, oh, God, Pete Davidson.
Big dick energy. No, I just fully bought into the world that they were giving me. And there's a humility to the character. There is a good humor. There is something far deeper and far more full of heart than I expected. And this is what Judd Apatow's really good at. He's good at doing the whole like stupid, dumb, like bro comedy that then turns into.
You can tell Judd Apatow's really interested in like relationships.
Yeah.
And like, because all of his movies are about like,
well, love. Fundamentally, he's interested in love.
About love, and like, approaching that from a strange angle.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I do want to talk about though, and it's like it's a minor spoiler, but it's one of those things that's revealed within the first few minutes of the film, so it's not. But
I'll allow it.
So Pete Davidson obviously lost his father during 9/11. He was a firefighter who lost his life in 9/11. But the film makes the choice that his dad died in like 2003. So it's like around the same time. His character's maybe supposed to be a couple of years younger than Peter's. But I thought that was interesting not to actually use 9/11. I wonder what do you think of that?
I think that it makes the story more personal rather than being like symbolic.
Like piggybacking on the
because
tragedy,
I mean 9/11 is such a culturally loaded event that and also that I think that the firefighters who died in 9/11, there is a sort of an awe and kind of aura around them that they're effectively untouchable as characters.
Yeah.
Like they can't, they've been turned into symbols of kind of like a heroic fight. They can't just be taken on their own terms as just an individual person with a family and kind of their own personality.
Yeah.
And so I think that it was actually quite an intelligent choice.
Yeah, I thought it was probably the right choice, but it was one that I was like, yeah.
Yeah, given the fact that it actually is one of those like, truth is stranger than fiction, like his dad actually did die in 9/11. I think that what's really interesting about Judd Apatow is he takes characters, and this is something I should have known going into it, but he takes characters that you're not meant to like, that you're not meant to empathize with because they're generally like no-hoper, sort of slacker kind of people, and he gets you, and not just the main character either, but like other people within the movie, and in interacting and giving each other space and actually allowing each other like forgiveness or allowing each other like these very human interactions and gaining understanding for each other and giving each other the room to be real people. You understand how much deeper that person is than what they first present themselves as. And I think that's something that is something really beautiful in cinema that not many films get to. And I really, really appreciated it. And I think it's definitely worth watching because of that.
Yeah, nice. So after that, we were meant to get Top Gun Maverick, but that's been delayed to December 23rd, which feels like a more appropriate release date for it in some ways. Now that mid to late December is now like blockbuster season in a way. And then In the Heights, the Lin-Manuel Miranda musical, is being delayed to June 18th next year. Although the other Lin-Manuel Miranda musical, Hamilton, was supposed to come out next year, and that got pulled forward a year because it's essentially this completed movie that Disney bought a while ago. It was going to be this big theatrical release for them, but they said, "Oh fuck it, we'll chuck it on Disney Plus on like Independence Day weekend in the States." So that's coming out next week, or like this week when you listen to this, I guess.
Well, quite crucially, the rights holders to the musical Hamilton are not making any money from live shows at the moment. And so that's why I think that Disney were allowed to do that, because the producers were like, shit, we ain't got any money coming from anywhere else, so we might as well make some money for this year.
Although, and it is worth mentioning as well, that if you're like, oh yeah, fuck, I can't wait to cheat the system and watch this, Disney Plus has stopped offering free trials just before the release of this, because they obviously know how much money it's going to make them. And also, because if you're a fan of Hamilton, and you're like, oh, how's that going to work on Disney Plus? There's 3 F-bombs in the show, or 2, sometimes 3. There's a couple that are like censored for comedic effect in the show, and then there's a few that are like actually said. One of them's going to be silenced, one of them's going to have like a record scratch, and the third one is going to be left intact, because there's a song that's not on the cast album, but it's like, from what I understand, it's like one of the emotional climaxes of the show, and so it's supposed to be like a little surprise for you when you actually go and watch the show. It's something that wasn't on the cast album, and there's an F-bomb in there, and that one has been left intact. And
is this the lone F-bomb on Disney Plus?
I might be. I don't think it is.
Sorry. 10 Things I Hate About You is on Disney Plus, and that's got heaps of F-bombs in it.
And the X-Men movies will be on there as well, and they've got a couple of them. Or they're coming on there anyway. But yeah, like, Lin-Manuel Miranda said, because people were like, oh, hey, are you going to censor it for Disney? And he said, like, essentially, if we can get rid of a couple of words and not change the meaning of the show, and that means millions more people can see it, I don't really see a problem with that. But yeah, he announced this week, like, what's going to happen, and he said he literally gave 2 fucks so that they could release it on Disney.
How much have you guys seen Hamilton in any form?
No. But yeah, there's a trailer out for this. It's like it was filmed without the audience there, so they were able to get the cameras like a bit up and closer rather than a normal filming, which is just a wide shot.
Jeremy, have you seen it?
Well, so I've seen some like YouTube rips of like live shows, just because I'm a musical theatre nerd.
Well, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Lin-Manuel Miranda has a kind of a staccato kind of rap style to the music that he does. So In the Heights is the same as Hamilton, and I'm much more of a classic musical kind of guy. Like I far prefer kind of sort of lush orchestral kind of like Wicked kind of stuff, as is famously the case. I have listened to the cast recording of Hamilton multiple times because when it came out, it was like, you know, if you liked musical theatre, you could not listen to it, and you had to have an opinion on it, and everyone loved it. And I just couldn't get into it. I was like, this is really weird. I don't like the lyrics of this seem cheesy in some of the songs. I just couldn't get into it, and all of my friends absolutely rubbished me about it. And it was one of those shows where I think that everyone who's seen it, even friends of mine who also didn't like it when they just listened to the cast recording, when they have watched the show as it's presented, they're like, that is the best show I've ever seen.
I haven't heard a single case of someone who actually has seen the show and didn't like it.
Yeah, so I am very excited about actually watching the show because I desperately want to love it as much as everyone does, because I'm like, why would I not, given everyone else? And so I've hooked it up with one of my closest friends who absolutely loves this show, and he's like, this is going to be the night that we're going to watch it together and you are going to eat your words. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Make sure you leave plenty of room.
I was just wondering because Hamilton has existed in the background of my life for 5 years now, and I barely know anything about it.
Well,
I know
you get to find
the
out
song,
July 3rd.
and I know vaguely what it's about.
So that brings us to the middle of the year. That's what we had covered on the podcast before. There are obviously, as always, movies like the Netflix movies and whatnot that we don't know when they're going to be released. Just a couple of quick ones, I guess. There is one big one, Spike Lee's new film. We'll get to that. There was a movie called The Hunt, which was one that was like thrown around quite a bit. It was supposed to come out last year, but then it was delayed because there was a mass shooting of like Republicans, and that's kind of what this film is about. So it's essentially a most dangerous game kind of thing, where a bunch of people wake up in the middle of a forest and they realize they're being hunted, and then they realize the thing they have in common is their political beliefs. And it's like it's very heavy-handed, and it's kind of like commentary, but it is a very fun watch, and it's only 90 minutes long, and it breezes by. Like this is one of those movies that I was like, oh, like, fuck, if I'm actually going to watch this movie, maybe I'll make myself a snack before it really gets into it, and I pause it, and it's been going for like an hour and 15 minutes, and it's okay, fuck, all right, I might as well just finish it. It's I genuinely a really, really good time. And then also there was that movie Extraction that came out on Netflix. It's fine if you like fucking action movies. It's a fine one. It's got good it's got good choreography. And then also it's worth mentioning the Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga, the Eurovision movie with Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams, comes out tonight. So it came out while we were recording this, so we haven't had a chance to watch it yet. But yeah, AJ, please do talk about Spike Lee's new movie, Da 5 Bloods. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
So this is my second highest ranked movie of the year, just after Onward. But in saying that, it's definitely a movie that feels more important than it feels good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No.
As in it doesn't make you feel good, but you when you finish it, you're like, shit. Like I am moved. I'm actually really unfamiliar with Spike Lee in general. The only other one I've seen from him is Black Klansman, which I loved. And so I think this is would probably be regarded as a more typical Spike Lee film than Black Klansman. I don't think it's as good as Black Klansman. It got really good reviews, The Five Bloods, before it came out, and then when it dropped, you read the Reddit thread for it, and everyone is like, I did not like this at all.
Really?
It's one of those kinds of movies, yeah. Like, you go to the Reddit discussion thread for it, and not a lot of kind words spoken about it.
Like, people just weren't prepared for it, or...
No, like, people are like, it's overly dramatic. I would go into how I feel about it more... but it's quite hard to talk about. What I'll say, and I hope this is vague enough, is it feels like two movies stitched together, and both are good movies, but together it feels weird watching them as one movie.
Right. Because I actually started watching this movie, and I actually just had to turn it off. Because it was, I don't know, I guess I was not in the right headspace for it, but it begins in literally the first 4 minutes of the movie is just kind of a supercut of like all these horrendous acts of violence that kind of American soldiers have done, and kind of American police have done over the years, and like unedited footage of like real people being shot in the head and like...
Right.
Oh yeah, sorry Jeremy, when we talked about the Hangover podcast, on the Hangover podcast when we were drunk, we talked about how like there was that controversy because they recreated a famous photo of a Vietnamese kid being shot in the like bloopers. Do you remember that?
Yeah. The famous execution style.
Yeah,
that's a video.
That's a video.
They showed the video in the
happening.
montage.
Yeah, I did know that video, yeah.
I didn't know it was a video, so and it only gets worse, Jeremy. Like the stuff, the real stuff you see, the real acts of violence, not like recreated, but the actual archival footage is like, are you allowed to show this?
Yeah, and the thing is, and to be really clear about this, like I didn't turn it off like, oh man, I don't need to be seeing that sort of stuff, because like genuinely, this is the reason why he's making this movie, right? Is that like people need to be confronted with the fact that like this is actually the society that they live in. This is the society we live in. Like
we live in a society.
These things. Yes, these things were done.
We do.
These things were done in the name of the power that we, that we are, that many of us are comfortable with, and so, and to give empathy for the perspective of people who are unlike us and have not had the same life that we have. Like it's important. Like you say, it's important. It's very difficult. And where I was on the day that I was starting to watch this, I was just like, whoa, I cannot, I can't do this right now.
Fair enough.
But I don't dismiss the movie at all. I think that it's incredibly important, and I would like to watch it at some point.
I definitely do want to watch it. And it was like, I've in the last week and a bit since it came out, I've only had time to watch like one non-podcast, non-film franchise Fortnite's film, and I chose The King of Staten Island because I felt like something a little bit lighter. It's Spike Lee. It's like all his directorial decisions, like the things you would say is like classic Spike Lee. They walk this impossible line of extremely intentional or completely nonsensical. There's no meaning behind it, and if you watch it with thinking about that, I think it's a very interesting head scratcher in some parts. But I don't really want to say anything more without getting into specifics. Fair enough. Cool. I mean, that's like, we could go over, but there's no point because I'll probably change movies that are supposed to come out in the second half of the year. But oh boy, there's a lot of them now.
Yeah, that podcast is going to be super long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually not even that many of them because a lot of the post the July onwards have already been delayed, and then some of the ones from early in the year have filled those spots.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, is that it then?
I just before we finish, I do want to sneakily. There is a 2019 movie that technically was released in America in 2019, but was not released in New Zealand
Here we go.
until
Doesn't
2020.
count.
But it's
Fake
my
fan.
it's my favorite movie that I've seen this year, and it's a Hidden Life by Terrence Malick. And I've watched some Terrence Malick movies and just been like, oh, what the hell is this? Like his style has gotten increasingly esoteric. And what's that?
Esoteric.
Oh, did we both say that at the same
Yeah, we
time?
did.
Cute. But yeah, his style has gotten increasingly esoteric, and
I'm going to edit it so that I say that at the same time.
And he basically, as a filmmaker, has kind of drifted away from narrative storytelling, like purely narrative filmmaking, to giving you more of kind of an impression. And A Hidden Life, I was ready to kind of go into it and see a similar thing. But instead, he's actually, you know how like some artists make some difficult albums and you can see that they're like trying out, like musicians, they're trying out some new sounds or stuff like that. And they're pretty difficult albums to get through. And then they produce like another album later on that perfectly blends. They've kind of achieved a mastery over that technique or a style, and they're able to use it in a way that people can actually totally understand.
I don't know. I can't think of any examples of what, but I can understand the concept you're trying to articulate.
Yeah. So basically, in A Hidden Life, it's a story of a guy who's objects to conscientious objector to the Nazi regime and refuses to fight for Hitler. And it's told over 3 hours. And the best way I can explain it is that Terrence Malick basically creates the film by painting using thousands of little moments from someone's life. And
Hidden Life.
So there's no scene in the movie where like two characters sit down and have a conversation or anything like that. There's just these like 10 to 15 second snatches of conversation moments and stuff like that all drive you towards a narrative. And it's just so beautiful and unlike anything I've ever seen before. And I just wanted to say, if you have the chance to watch A Hidden Life, I fully recommend it.
Cool. AJ, do you want to talk about any other movies that could have come out in any year?
Yeah, the rules have gone off. I want to talk about Big Trouble. No, well, that'll be it then for the first half of 2020. That's the show.
That's the
Hope
show.
you guys enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments what your most disappointing film of the year so far is. And if you enjoyed this, then please subscribe to Popture on all the channels. Subscribe, like, follow, whatever your preferred method is on all the social medias such as Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You can email us at coldpopturemedia@gmail.com. And stay tuned for after this for the post-credit scene. Oh, join our Discord. Our Discord is fucking popping these days, man. There's so many people in the Discord. It's so great. So get on the Discord. Get on the Patreon. We are... I don't want to say how much money we make, but we're $1 away from a new triple figure.
We're so rich.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool. Join the Patreon and donate $1 so that we can get over the line. But yeah, any other final que seras from you boys?
I just want to talk quickly about the cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Welcome along, everybody, to the post-credit scene. This is a sequence that plays at the end of each episode, brought to you from our patrons, by our patrons even.
On Patreon.
On Patreon, www.patreon.com/coldpopture. Donate $5 or more, and you too can ask us a question, which will feature
just you
in the
two,
segment.
Though. No
Just
one
you
else.
two.
Just you two.
You two, and the two who are listening know who they are.
Yeah.
This question comes to us from Alexander McDonald, who says, if you could recover one and only one piece of lost media and had the means to distribute it to the entire world, what would you choose and why? What an interesting question, Alexander, because we just did an entire episode on this very subject, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
But
since
we
then,
did miss a few.
Yeah, we did miss a few that people have asked us about. There's the cat's butthole cut, which I still question the authenticity of. And of course, the Sonic original Because presumably there was an entire film almost ready to go with a real fucking weird-ass looking Sonic. And it would be so interesting to watch those side by side. I mean, it would probably get kind of boring after a couple minutes, but...
yeah, I don't really want to have to watch the Sonic movie again. I'm not invested enough to...
But also, spoilers
Cats,
for the Sonic movie. There's... like Tails appears at the end of it, and I would love to see what he looked like in his original design.
Yeah. So, in terms of what I'd really want to release, I was thinking the other night that, like, they should just make Duel of the Fates. Like, if you give it 10 years so that all the cast, I guess they probably wouldn't return at this point, all the cast have aged up properly, and then just be like, yeah, we're remaking Star Wars Episode 9 because no one liked it last time. People would get over the, like, kind of breaking of the rules of that. I don't think they'll do it, but I don't see why they wouldn't do it in terms of as a creative decision. Like, I think it's still valid. People do it with sequels all the time. So that's my answer, if that was the answer. Might not have been the answer.
Nice. Yeah, I just want to see Taylor Swift's butthole. In cat form. It's not creepy.
I'm not some kind of freak.